For today's webinar, we'll be looking at how TPM thinking can enhance your lean, operational excellence and CI journey. Our presenter today is Ross Kennedy. Ross is the President and Founder of CTPM. He's recognised as Australasia's leading authority on total productive maintenance and CTPM's operational excellence through the TPM and lean methodology. So let's get started. We hope you enjoy today's webinar, and I'll now pass you over to Ross.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our video today on how TPM thinking can enhance your lean, operational excellence and CPM journey. Now, I'm just put you on visual so at least you can see who's doing the talking. Right, great to have you all here today, and hopefully we can share some of our learnings with you over the next 30 minutes. We've identified 5 topics or 5 subsections we'd like to talk about. Where does TPM fit into true north and perfect processes? Why is TPM being so misunderstood? What's TPM really trying to achieve? Estimating the impact of poor equipment performance and using TPM to address what's in it from the reaction from the workforce. Hopefully these 5 themes or topics are relevant, and again, if you have any questions as we progress, please do not hesitate to highlight them as we go along. Right, so where does TPM fit into true north and perfect processes? I think most of us are familiar with Toyota being the developer of lean through their Toyota production system and Toyota Way, and they talk about true north is where they're striving for, and it's all about perfection, which is again creating perfect processes focused on customer value from the customer's perspective. And that's why we talk about the lean journey and why Toyota refer to their journey all the time, because you're always striving to get to perfection. Now, to achieve this, you need to create perfect processes with perfect equipment and develop highly skilled and disciplined people who can operate and maintain the perfect processes. It's all very well to create a perfect process or create a process and then let it deteriorate because people don't look after it. It's a bit like you go and buy a new piece of equipment that comes in and you think, wow, I've got the perfect new machine. Then after several years, because of lack of care and looking after, the thing starts deteriorating and performing poorly. So we need these the skills and the discipline in people to keep the processes perfect. Now, the interesting thing is most lean implementations start with leadership education, which is very important. Then focus on creating perfect processes, first through value stream mapping, followed by trying to develop discipline within people through 5S, with, unfortunately, equipment issues left to maintenance and engineering. What a lot of people don't realise at Toyota, they actually developed TPM in the late 1960s so they could get the Toyota production system to work in the 1970s. So TPM was actually developed before the Toyota production system, before lean, so that the lean would work. And unfortunately, TPM is probably one of the most misunderstood parts of the improvement journey, and especially in the last probably 10 or so years, where since the advent of the book The Machine That Changed the World in '96 and Lean Thinking and all the other books, everyone's been so focused on lean, they have sort of had a go at TPM, misunderstood it, and therefore just focused on the lean. So just talking a little bit about why it was misunderstood. TPM was originally known as total productive maintenance, with its main activity or pillar being autonomous maintenance. Now originally there was 5 activities or pillars to the first form of TPM. First one being to focus on losses, equipment losses, using a driving measure called overall equipment effectiveness. And then the second one was autonomous maintenance, the third being planned maintenance to support autonomous maintenance and education and training, and finally new equipment, making sure it was TPM friendly when it came in. So everyone looked at this autonomous maintenance and thought it was all about operators doing maintenance work, and they thought total productive maintenance was all about, oh, this is let's get the operators to do some of the maintenance work. What people didn't realise, in Japan the word maintenance has a different meaning to that used in the West. In Japan the word maintenance means care, caring for an asset. For example, someone in Japan doing maintenance on their car would be washing the car. Whereas in the West, we use the word maintenance in the context of repair. So if someone was doing maintenance on a car in the West, we'd say that probably changing the brake linings or doing some sort of repair work on the car. So in the West, a lot of companies thought TPM was about getting operators to do maintenance work so that the number of maintenance people required could be reduced, thus reducing costs. Now, in the 90s, especially, you had the advent of or in the 80s and 90s, you had the advent of the high quality, lower cost items, whether it be cars or electronic equipment or whatever, coming into the Western world from Japan, and everyone recognising, one, they had to get their quality up, but most importantly get their costs down. So TPM, i.e. maintenance, getting operators to do maintenance, what a great idea. This way we'll save some money. And we also even, this was reinforced in America by some textbooks that came out. One that comes to mind is the TPM That Works book by Maggard, which was all about task transfer, which again promoted the concept of how do we move tasks from maintenance people over to operators to reduce the amount of maintenance people we need and hence reduce maintenance spend. And unfortunately that had a lot of resistance for obvious reasons, with maintenance people seeing giving away their knowledge would make them lose their job, operators seeing being asked to do more work, wanting more money, wanting more effort. So you can understand why a lot of applications didn't work. In Australia, we even had the situation in the late 90s, we're working with some companies that engaged TAFE, which is the local training, to come to site and train operators to use tools so they could carry out basic maintenance tasks. Because again, it was thought, oh, this TPM is all about getting operators to do basic maintenance. So what really is TPM trying to achieve? Now, TPM is about applying the quality concepts of prevention at source to equipment. In the 50s and 60s, Dr. Edward Deming and other leading quality people from America were training the Japanese about quality, because that was a big issue the Japanese had in the 50s and 60s in relation to manufacturing. And in their training quality, like Deming, I guess had three main themes. One was focus on the whole process, not just one part of it. It's probably why value stream mapping is such an important aspect of lean. The second point was apply prevention at source to your processes. So look at picking up on quality problems at the earliest possible time. For example, if the raw material is not right, don't use it. The packaging material is not right, don't use it. Or if something's coming to you from a previous process that's not right, don't use it. Red bin it, or if necessary, pull the cord, stop the process and get it sorted out. And finally, the third concept was tyranny of time, which was simply the longer the time frame between when a quality problem occurs and you finding out about it, the less chance you've got to getting to the root cause. Now, as I try and apply all this thinking, they realised that equipment performance was absolutely critical, and also people's discipline to looking after equipment was critical to get the right thinking in the organisation. So they developed TPM using the principle of prevention at source, but applied it to equipment. So it was about finding the little problems at the earliest possible time on equipment rather than the bigger problems further down the life cycle of components. For example, you may have a bearing that had a grease line feeding to it. If the grease line got damaged or broke, in a lot of cases, because it's hidden inside the machine, no one would pick up on it, and ultimately, without getting proper greasing, the bearing would fail, and the equipment would be down for a lengthy period of time, and there'd be an expensive repair. And they realised if they could find the bent grease line or broken grease line at the earliest possible time, they could fix it for very little cost and very little downtime. And to do that, they realised they needed to get the operators involved to find the problems, not fix them, just find them. So Toyota developed effective ways to train the operators to identify equipment defects or problems at the earliest possible time, then change the equipment so it was easy for operators to find the defects or problems at the earliest possible time. They didn't want operators spending all their time finding defects, they wanted them to operate the plant. But they wanted them also to find the defects. So let's put perspex guarding on equipment so we can see inside. Let's put good lighting in there. Let's bring everything up to eye level so we can see issues and things. Let's match mark nuts and bolts so we can see them coming loose. All these things were done to change equipment to make it easy to find problems. And the other aspect to it was the maintenance department. They had to change the maintenance department so they would respond to the small little problems identified by the operators. Because in most maintenance departments they're driven by their work order system, where all items are recorded in the work order system and they're prioritised based on importance. In other words, the critical issues get the highest priority. The small little jobs that aren't causing a problem get very low priority. And that was just anti what they were trying to do with getting the operators to keep them motivated to find small problems. So they had to introduce a dual system for managing maintenance work. One was a defect management system that was separate from the work order system. And then, so again, there's quite a few changes going on in maintenance. And finally, they need to get a stable production plan to ensure regular clean for inspections to allow the operators and maintainers to learn from doing regular cleans to find defects and rectify the defects at the earliest possible time. And if you've got a production plan that's all over the place, getting changed continuously, you can't get standardised work in place so at a standard time people all come together and learn about and care for the equipment. So these were the things that Toyota developed to support the development of the Toyota production system. And this was providing the discipline within the organisation to then take on and be very, very successful at the Toyota production system. A lot of people don't realise that this is all the pre-work that Toyota did before they got lean working for them. Now the other thing about what are we trying to achieve, TPM is about introducing inductive approach to complement the common lean deductive approach. Now what I mean by that is that if we read any lean textbook, they'll talk about problem solving, which is absolutely critical, and they'll talk about the plan, do, check, act model, or if you're from America and Six Sigma, there's the DMAIC model, but they're all a scientific method of problem solving. So it's not just going out, seeing a problem and jumping in and doing something, it's following up, checking to make sure that you have got the desired results and then acting to make sure it's locked in by standardization, etc. So problem solving is a critical part of lean and TPM, and we all need to learn about it. What a lot of people don't, and you don't find in any lean, I haven't found any lean textbook to date, is discussion about the inductive approach to improvement, which is a real foundation or critical part of TPM learning, which is focusing on prevention at source, e.g. equipment defects and everything that is not right. Small, little losses of waste, recognising the big losses and waste also reduce and become easier to solve. So again, if you think of our Pareto chart here, the inductive approach is about tackling the tail of the Pareto chart. Not just looking at the big ones and saying, what's the most important issue, let's put a team together and address it. It's while we're doing that, in parallel, working at the tail end and addressing all the little things. And to do that, we need a different process. It's called the check, act, plan, standardise, do process, which is quite different from the plan, do, check, act. Because what you're doing is you're not going out there and identifying a problem, you're actually going out there and exposing equipment defects and then getting those defects fixed, and then you're creating checklists to make sure you can come back and check those issues that appeared, and then doing regular monitoring to sustain. And it's all about developing people who can address issues. And what we've found is that when we look at losses in the workplace, they can basically be divided up into three types. One is management losses, which is things like when we think about why the equipment is not running. It could be that we're having a lunch break, we're having wash-up time, we're having a set number of setups to do. They're all management decisions. So they're some sort of losses we do have to incur or dictated by management. Then we have what we call technical losses and people development losses. Technical losses are when things go wrong, things break. For example, weaknesses in equipment. A spring on a machine may break. So the deductive technical approach is let's go design up a new, better spring. What we mean by people losses is that people can't find the spring when it breaks, for example. Or something goes wrong, we start getting quality issues and we don't know what's causing them, and we take time to go and find that the spring's broken. And then it takes time to go and get organised to get the spring replaced. Now they're the skills of people to diagnose problems at the earliest possible time, to understand the function of their equipment, to know that if a spring breaks we're likely to get quality problems, rather than waiting until we have for example, a pallet load of product that may not be sealed properly. And what we've found is that when we look at losses in the workplace, and this has been done by many companies, some very large ones, Procter & Gamble, etc., you can start doing your deductive problem solving and addressing the big things on the Pareto chart, but it'll probably only take you up from, say, if you start at 50% OEE, up to about 70%. It's the inductive, getting rid of all the little things that will have a big impact to take you up to best practice of, say, 85. So there's some interesting learnings in that. The other thing to think about from this is if we talk about big losses and little losses, again, we might have a 4-hour breakdown once a month or once every 4 weeks. So we go, well, we've got to work on that. Let's have a problem-solving session to stop that breakdown from occurring. Meanwhile, we might be having little 1-minute delays on our line. A 1-minute delay might happen 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times an hour. So if it was, say, 6 times an hour, that's 6 minutes, little 1-minute delay. 6 minutes out of 60 is 10%. So over 40 hours, you'd be losing, say, 4 hours. Whereas your 4-hour delay every 4 weeks might only be 1 hour a week. Now, if you only had delays, that still would equate to 2 hours a week. So it's the little things that are quite significant. So again, this inductive thinking is about addressing all these little things. Right, so finally, what's TPM all about? To create a productive workplace. It's failure-free, trouble-free, safe. It's about getting 0 breakdowns, and what we've found is there's a sequence to this. You need to get rid of all the breakdowns if you want to get rid of all the quality problems. You need to get rid of all the quality problems if you want to get rid of all the accidents. Most process quality problems occur when the plant's not running perfectly, shuts down unexpectedly, equipment fails, or is restarting. And accidents can occur in the course of responding to problems such as equipment failures, because we're not used to it. It's an unusual event. A lot of accidents occur in unusual events. So this is why Toyota started with TPM on their journey. They had to get the equipment under control. They had to get the equipment right. They had to get the people right to support the equipment and the care of the equipment. And that gave them the discipline to then introduce standardized work very easily into the production processes. So achieving 0 breakdowns led to 0 quality problems and 0 accidents. So the next point I'll touch on is estimating the impact of poor equipment performance. A lot of people don't realize just what it is costing us because the equipment is not running perfectly. We tend to work around all the issues and we tend to live with them, and no one ever really tallies up what it's costing us. And we created this slide many years ago, and it's where, using an iceberg as the analogy, top of the iceberg is your typical maintenance costs, the things that are highly visible, the things the maintenance budget is presented every month or reviewed every month in the monthly reports, and everyone focuses on it and probably complains about you spending too much. What is not clearly put together and laid on the table is what it's costing you because the equipment did not run perfectly. And you can have a lot of things and costs incur, as shown in this slide, because the equipment is not running perfectly. Now, it counts, but they're just all camouflaged. They're not laid out in front of people to say, whoa, we should do something about getting the equipment to work better, rather than just bash up the maintenance people. Now again, using the iceberg analogy, as you noticed, bottom of the iceberg is quite large. Now a lot of people tackle maintenance spend by tackling how much we spend on materials and labour and overtime and contractors, etc. It's all about trying to chop the top of the iceberg off. Now you take 20% off the top of the iceberg, all that's going to happen is it's going to float back up the top because the big mass is at the bottom. Smart companies chop 20% off the bottom, and when you do that, the actual top comes down. And that's what TPM is all about, addressing OEE losses both deductively and inductively, reducing the bottom of the iceberg, and then your maintenance costs come down. That's why most companies tend to reduce their maintenance spend by 25 to 50%. We've got clients who have achieved those targets, and we can give you case studies if anyone's interested, because they have attacked the bottom of the iceberg. And this little chart we use where we've done a lot of analysis on this for clients. And for example, if you've got a $2 million maintenance budget spend, and what we've found is a correlation between the lower the OEE, the bigger the bottom of the iceberg is. So if you've got an OEE of, say, 65 when it should be 85, your bottom of the iceberg is going to be probably about 4 times the cost that you're spending on maintenance, in this case 8 million. You don't get TPM and the equipment working perfectly going for you. Your maintenance spend will probably cut by half, so it'll become 1. Then the ratio, when you're at say 85% OEE, will be 1 to 1. So you'll actually have 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom. You'll save 8 million. And that's money across the whole supply chain. And again, people just don't realise what you can get out of this TPM. And that's again why Toyota did TPM first, because they wanted to get those savings. They wanted to get those savings. That's why their costs have been so impressive. So, using TPM to address the what's in it for me reaction from our workforce. We find in a lot of Australian, especially Australian workplaces, the workforce can be quite difficult to get along with sometimes, set in their ways, not really keen to take on change and do things differently and standardise work. I want to do it my way, etc. And then if you do want to do something a bit extra, it's say, what's in it for me? I want more money if you want me to do something more. So we really need to address this what's in it for me in the workplace. So what we've found is TPM is based on the premise, if our equipment is not working perfectly, our personnel become frustrated and we cannot service our customers competitively. Now, as such, if introduced properly, it allows us to address what's in it for me culture of our workforce by asking the question, do you ever get frustrated because the equipment does not run perfectly? If you go back to your workplace and ask people the question, do you ever get frustrated because the equipment does not run perfectly, you'll find most people will nod their heads saying yes. Now, whether you're talking to operators, whether you're talking to maintenance people, whether you're talking to planning people, whether you're talking to supervisors, you'll find that most people will say, yes, we do get frustrated because the equipment doesn't work perfectly. So the thing about TPM, if introduced properly, and you don't have to use the TPM language or words if you don't wish to, but the concepts and the thinking is the critical thing. If you go in there and start saying to people, let's get together and start working towards getting this equipment to work perfectly, is that going to make life better for you? And what you'll do is you'll find you'll get a lot of good buy-in, and that's what we've found in all the companies we've worked with. Now, last point, just to summarise all this. We're always on the lookout for the latest thinking, and we talk to our clients and try to understand what their latest thinking is and where they're learning from. And when we talk to different companies, for example, I was talking to Coca-Cola recently, and they had recently reading a book, This is Lean. So we rushed out and got that and read it. It's quite an interesting book, and I used that for reference points. The other day I was talking to Ross Gardner at AstraZeneca here in Sydney. Now, Ross is the operations manager, improvement manager, I should say. He'll be speaking at our forum, which Chris spoke about. Very astute gentleman, and he's been recently over to Europe with AstraZeneca and catching up on the latest thinking, and he came back with this book called Leadership Making Lean a Success, written in Sweden, but in 2013. Bit academic in places, but it has got some good points in it. And one that I picked up on, and this is taken the earlier part of the book, and it reminded me of a slide that we used many years ago, and in our training. And the key message was, for improvements to be sustainable, a balance is required between stakeholders of interests. And they talk about the stakeholders being society, employees, owners, or shareholders, and customers and suppliers. And if we start doing things that are just going to make one of these groups happy and risk others, you've got big problems on your hands. You're not going to sustain. We've seen situations where companies have rushed in and done cost reductions, and it hasn't been good for the employees. It's created problems in the plant that may cause environmental risks, etc., which hasn't been good for society, or it's impacted on performance to deliver, etc., and service customers properly. And those sort of things are great short term, but they just don't sustain. And that's why TPM is again a very powerful part of the lean journey, critical part of the lean journey, because it does work on those four stakeholders. The customers get you get better satisfaction for your customers, you get better satisfaction for your shareholders with all the savings and increased capacity and not having to spend on new equipment because you need more capacity. Employees getting the accidents down, having a better workplace, cleaner workplace, engaged, being listened to, and society, and reducing risk. Operational risk is a big thing, and we've seen, sadly, where fires and other disasters have absolutely almost destroyed companies because of some operational problem, often relating to equipment and people. So key learning, and that's all an improvement strategy positively impacts on all four areas of Barwick will not sustain. So hopefully found what we've talked about of some use and get you thinking about how can you get a more greater focus on the equipment performance part of your lean journey. To help you with that, we put this paper together. It's just a brief summary of some of the points I've talked about and expanding on a few other points you might find of interest about understanding what TPM is really all about. You have our checklist, which is a great starting point to think about the issues about getting people engaged by, again, using equipment as a focus for starting your or enhancing your lean journey. Chris mentioned about membership. Our membership is going very strong, our community in Australasia. A lot of companies are taking advantage of that, so I'd certainly commend you to that one. And you can find information about that or be part of us on LinkedIn, where we get a lot of posts and questions, and on YouTube, where this webinar will be posted, and there's a lot of other webinars for you to have a look at. And finally, as Chris mentioned, our forum is in Sydney. I would strongly recommend anyone involved in improvement should attend. It's a great opportunity to meet up with other people in similar situations and organisations. This year, the forum, we've made it very broad and open. We've invited it, we've linked in with Apex and the Lean Network. So you've got speakers talking about not CTPM methodology, their methodology, different methodologies being applied in different companies with great successes. And so it gives you hopefully a much broader perspective of how to get improvement to work or how to enhance the improvement activities at your side. So with that, thank you very much for listening in, and welcome to any questions.
Thanks, Ross. Just having a little look around for questions now. If anyone's got them, they can type them in. Okay, yeah, looks like we have one here. It says, "Hi Ross, if you're progressing through your corporate's lean journey, supported by a detailed scorecard system, how do you convince them to incorporate TPM thinking and activities into the journey?"
A good question. Yeah, we've come across sites where they're going down their lean journey and it's being driven through corporate, which is a good thing, and corporate, to control it, have come up with a wonderful audit process or scorecard system, and they want people to move up the scorecard. And the challenge you find is when you look at the scorecards, often they've been created with this misunderstanding what TPM is all about. All the things I've talked about today are not incorporated. into that scorecard because people don't understand TPM part of it. So you've really got to get the corporate people to start understanding how important TPM is, how it was critical for Toyota, how it was actually established well before the Toyota production system as a foundation for the Toyota production system. That's why we produce these webinars. So hopefully the webinar, send it to your corporate people, ask them to spend half an hour and have a look at it. And if they want us to talk to them, happy to do so.
Great, thank you very much. Just having a last little look for any more questions. Doesn't look like there is, so we'll call that a day. Thank you to everyone for attending, and just a quick reminder to visit our events page on the CTPM website for events happening in capital cities later in the year. Please feel free to contact us at any time with any further questions if you require information or would just like to have a chat. Our next webinar will be held on the 23rd of August with the topic Using TPM to Enhance Safety Performance at Your Site. On behalf of everyone at CTPM, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Wishing you all the best, and we'll see you next time.